Segment 3, Gold and Black Live, one of my favorite people. The problem with Elliot and I is that we've known each other. We don't really want to talk any sports, but we got to do that here. We do like to talk sports, but there's usually other things we like to hit on, the world at large, etc. And there's it's always challenges to have those conversations. Intellectually, it's difficult because Elliot knows his stuff, but it's difficult for me. But we enjoy our conversations. All right, we'll talk a little hoops on the front end, but I also want to. You certainly see things from a broad-based perspective and what's gone on in Purdue football and Purdue athletics here over the last few days, but really over the last couple of years has been pretty amazing. But let's first turn our attention to where you guys are. Obviously, it's hard to believe, but next Thursday night you open up against Marion at 7 p.m. I believe it is,
right.
Exhibition game, but. How you feel right now with the guys?
Well, certainly a different preseason than we've had in the last 2-3 seasons. A lot of leadership and a lot of minutes played, games started, points, all that stuff. Walking out the door from last year's team, just a different team this year. A lot of new pieces. It's been interesting to hear Coach Painter's take on our team, either after each practice or on a weekly basis, to kind of get his thoughts. He always sees things that the rest of us don't see, and thinks of things a different way, maybe, to see how he wants to piece this thing together. We have a lot of different pieces that we can play multiple positions. I think that's one of the strengths of this team, but that's also one of the challenges for Coach, is to figure out how he wants to kind of put that puzzle together as we go into each game. Right now, we're going to leave later today to bus over to Columbus and scrimmage West Virginia tomorrow.
Yeah.
So,
which is an annual grudge match. I mean, that's a great thing.
We look forward to it every year. It's a great day. It would be a great day for our guys. Another difference between this year's team and the last 2 years is 2 years ago we went to Spain and played a handful of games over there. You had 10 practices over the summer. Last year being the World University Games, you play a bunch of games. So we felt like at that point we had game experience under our belt, and we kind of knew what we had. This year, we haven't had one of those games this summer. So even though this team has been around all summer, worked out together, practiced together, there hasn't been a competition against somebody wearing different colored uniforms. So tomorrow's the real deal. And for guys like Eric Hunter and Travion Williams and Emmanuel, they're going to walk into a gym right out of the gates and see West Virginia, who is got one of the larger rosters we've seen in recent years. They have a lot of big guys. They're always tough, physical.
They play 94 feet.
94 feet, hard-nosed, well-coached. So it will be a baptism for those guys tomorrow for sure. And we can't wait. As a staff, we're really looking forward to it, because what happens after that game is then we get in the office on Monday, we've got all this tape to watch now.
Yeah.
And all this tape to break down, and all these now opportunities to bring guys in the office and sit down with them and watch tape individually, watch tape as a team. And it's an invaluable learning tool. So the scrimmage is going to be great. I have no idea what to expect in terms of outcome or anything. I never do going into those things, and we don't take much stock in it. It's more just about individual guys for us and what we're trying to get done.
In your role in operations is interesting. What is the day like? So you guys going over tonight?
Yeah, we'll go over tonight. We're practicing right now. We'll get something to eat at Mackey, and then we'll jump in the bus and roll over. Get to the hotel, we'll have a little snack, watch a little more film tonight. We try to start getting the guys acclimated into
a game mode. Yeah.
To a game mode,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's mainly for the new guys. The older guys, Klein and Grady and Carson, they've been through this. This is old hat to them. But for the new guys, we're trying to get them to they start getting into a pregame routine that really starts the day before a game, and then we'll wake up early, have a little bite to eat at the hotel, and get over to the gym. And
what time are you playing?
We're playing at 10 in the morning, so
okay,
it's going to be an early rise.
And then you'll be done before football, maybe. Well,
yeah,
or at least
we'll be done.
The end of it.
So I'm just hoping that the satellite's going to be in good shape on the bus on the way home, so we can watch some football. But
you can watch it on the internet. I'll give you my direct TV.
Well, yeah, we'll have some gadgets, and the guys will be on their phones and iPads and things like that. So.
All right, so. If there's been a surprise, has there been anybody that's jumped forward? I mean, you do have such an interesting, outside of, and this is simply stated and way too simply stated, but outside of Carson, you have kind of a homogenous, you have so many parts, like you said, but is anybody really that we should be watching for that we may not necessarily know about, or is it?
I think our seniors have really elevated their play,
yeah,
and
I think
that's. you always expect that, every year you guys are going to take another step. But Coach Painter's said it 1,000 times. Ryan Klein's been our sixth starter for a couple of years now, and I really think he's going to have a really good year. I think he's going to really take off in the scoring department. Ryan's a guy that gets labeled a shooter, and I think he was more so his freshman, sophomore year. He's a guy that's got the ability to do some other things offensively, just hasn't had a chance to showcase that. I think you're going to see him score in more of a variety of ways. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still shooting at a high level. Yeah. But I think he'll score the ball in a variety of ways this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he ups his points per game by a significant margin. And Grady Eifert's going to play for us. He's going to, and he brings not only in the past he's always brought that blue collar, hard nosed mentality. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, Grady's really shooting the ball well.
I know he made the 5 threes in the first.
And that's not a fluke. Yeah, that's not a fluke. He has been shooting the ball well all practice. So I think he's going to surprise some people. But we just have so many new pieces. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I talked about the 3 freshmen. We also have the 2 guys that redshirted last year with Stefanovic and Wheeler. Both guys that can both shoot. I think the one thing that people may not realize is, you think that with Dakota leaving, and P.J. Thompson's an excellent three-point shooter, Vince Edwards, you lose 3 really good shooters. Sasha and Aaron can really shoot the ball. Eric Hunter can shoot the ball. I think we're going to drop off a little bit in three-point shooting because we set such a high bar. Yeah. But I don't know if it'll be such a drop-off as people may assume. So.
Yeah, it's interesting your schedule this year, and obviously you have a lot to do with that and how that gets set up. How do you view? I mean, you're starting. It seems early, but it really isn't. But you got home games, the 1st, the 6th, the 10th. The first obviously being an exhibition game. But tell me what you like about your schedule with your young team, but also maybe things that maybe make it challenging, or how do you see it fitting? Obviously, you have Charleston too.
It's middle really November. In terms of scheduling, it's a new day. I mean, when I was doing scheduling 14, 15 years ago. You used to concentrate more on a win total. And I think in the last couple years specifically, we're not as concerned about a win total. We're more concerned about strength of schedule, and we're more concerned about quality wins. So I would much rather have 19 wins with a bunch of quality wins than 22 wins with 4 or 5 of those being against, poorly ranked teams in what used to be the RPI, now is the new net system.
Yeah. Gonna take me all year to figure that out.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm begging for that formula because we want to know what all goes into that. But we have some games this year on the slate that have the potential to give us some positive results in the net. Florida State's a top 25 team that we got in the ACC Challenge. We go down there.
It'll be a tough game.
Be a very tough game.
And you were around the last time you were down there.
Yeah, that was not very pleasant
that
to be
was a bad one.
But then we go to Texas, which worked out great because it's a chance for us to get Carson back home. Yeah. But also, obviously, the Longhorns, a great program. Matt's got a good relationship with Coach Smart down there. They'll come back to Mackey next year. And then the Charleston tournament you talked about is a really loaded field. 5 of the 8 teams were in the NCAA tournament last year. And people see that, and the team that's going to jump out is going to be Virginia Tech because they're the highest ranked team. Yeah. I think they're in the top, right around 14, 13, somewhere in there. But if we were to advance on our side of the bracket, we have a potential to meet Wichita State or Davidson. Davidson is a team that was getting votes. They were in the tournament last year, really well coached. You could make an argument they might be the best team in the field. So it's going to be a really challenging field down there. A lot of chances to make, I keep wanting to say RPI points, but it's not applicable anymore. But a really good chance to strengthen your strength of schedule. And then obviously going to play Notre Dame in Indianapolis again. A lot of good names on the non-conference schedule that will test us. And I'll tell you what, we're not looking past the first couple games. Ball State's a really good team, a team that went in on the road and won at Notre Dame last year, and has done some damage. So we've got our hands full this year in a good way. And then we've got the 2 extra Big Ten games. So we've gone up to 20 league games this year, which I think is great. And I think Coach Painter was one of the drivers of that at the Big Ten level. I don't know if he ever says that or not, but he doesn't really say anything about himself, so I know that he's probably not going to bring that up. But he was really pushing that in the Big Ten coaching meetings. And at first, I think there was some reluctance, and now I think guys are starting to see it. The ACC is going to go to it next year, so it's one of those things where it's kind of gaining popularity. And it all goes back to playing those better games to stack up those quality wins. One of the reasons we were a 2 seed last year and in conversation for a 1 seed was all of those quad 50 or quad 1 wins that we had last year. The win at Maryland in the non-conference, Northwestern here, winning at Michigan. All those kind of wins like that were quad 1 wins that really paid dividends on our resume come tournament time.
Yeah, and you got to, and obviously from a Purdue season ticket holder perspective, the fact that you have Indiana and Michigan State back to back, right? I believe it is in January. I haven't put the schedule to memory yet, but it is just going to be a lot of fun. Ohio University, also a program that's at least interesting, and of course Jim Schaus, the athletic director, they're bringing another quality of team into Mackey Arena. All right, I want to get your quick perspective on all this other, which is Purdue football and the excitement around that. Not only what it means for you guys, the basketball program, but just from a where you work and morale standpoint. This number 4 guy, Rondell Moore's pretty good. Jeff Brom's not too bad either.
Yeah, it's tremendous. I mean, I tell people this. A handful of years ago, we had decisions to make on home football weekends, whether or not we were going to take recruits to the game, and that was as a Purdue guy. And you
had some big ones in last weekend, right?
Yeah, and it's I can't tell you how much of a difference that is for recruiting. I mean, it's night and day. If a kid rolls into West Lafayette and he's here for basically 48 hours on his official visit, it's your chance to. By that point, he pretty much knows the coaches. He pretty much knows about your program. Yeah. This is your chance to show off your community, your fans to a certain extent, your campus, and all the people that are around the athletic department. So when kids come in to a home game that's like sold out or has a great atmosphere and there's a buzz in the stadium, it makes all the difference in the world. Yeah. And a few years ago, we weren't even going into the football stadium because it would have backfired on us. And a recruit would have sat there and said, "So this is this is you guys." Like I've seen better. Yeah. So now it's a 180. Now it's you're going. It's an event. Everybody's looking forward to it. You build your itinerary around it, where you're doing things on campus throughout the day. We'll take kids around. On a home football Saturday in the golf cart and drive through campus, and it's awesome. I mean, I just want to drive through campus without the recruits and just go hang out. Yeah. And there's just that buzz and that vibe, and it really helps Purdue put its best foot forward, and it helps to convey to that kid that, look, there's energy here. There's a lot of people who bleed black and gold, and then all the stuff that we sell in terms of like all the alums out there that when you enter the real world, Purdue on your chest means something. Yeah. And it's not just like Purdue basketball is going to open some doors, but Purdue in general opens doors. Yeah. And we tell our players all the time, when you graduate from here, if we want you to play as basketball as long as you can, but if you once the ball stops bouncing and you're done playing basketball, there'll be a Purdue person hey, what's he up to now? Yeah. I want to hire him. Hey, I got an opening in my company. He'd be great. So all that stuff helps on the recruiting side of that and helps basically kind of back up what you've been selling to the kid from the entire time.
You're going to have a near sellout probably next week or very close to it with Iowa, 3:30 game. Which does that make, when in your recruiting visit, does that make better for you with scheduling? And the night games message? Yeah,
it just depends. We can kind of work around a bunch of things. There's certain things they always want to get in on visits. I mean, you always want to get some campus time with some academic, on the academic side of things. So whatever the young man's interested in from a major standpoint, we're going to meet with that school and somebody from that school. And also it depends when they can get to town. I mean, sometimes you can get them in on a Friday afternoon. That's great. You can knock out some stuff Friday afternoon, and then Saturday can be devoted to more just kind of tailgating or hanging out or playing open gym or that kind of thing. It changes a little bit now that we're into practice mode. So we'll practice. We're going to practice before the Iowa game and have a normal practice, and then the recruit, if we have any recruits in there. Because the other thing too is not only do you have kids coming in on official visits, you have kids on unofficial visits too that maybe just come in for the day.
And you don't always know that all that much.
Right, yeah, and sometimes you get a phone call on Thursday night, say, hey, our schedule freed up, can we come to the game? Yeah. Great. And then basically they'll come watch practice, and then we'll go to the game and hang out with them and just get to know them, and they'll get to know the staff a little bit better.
All right, well, we're going to look forward to, from that and everything else that's gonna come down now. You again, a keen observer of sports. So Purdue and football as well. Michigan State will be a challenge for tomorrow. What do you expect to see out of Purdue tomorrow?
Well, I think a lot's gonna be between the years.
Yeah.
How quickly can they put that in the rearview mirror?
Yeah.
That's not, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to think that way. I think that's just human nature. If they've gotten refocused, I really like their chances. I think the game's been, in terms of who's been favored, it's been kind of back and forth all week. So I think it's going to be a very close game. But I don't know what the weather does to it. I know you guys are talking about rain. I'm not sure who that favors. The winds were whipping around on Saturday.
That was crazy.
And some people thought, well, what are we going to do? We're in trouble. And it didn't matter one bit. So I think sometimes the weather element maybe gets a little overblown. I don't like Michigan State coming off a loss like that. Although they had some circus stuff going on in that game, so they have something to put in their rearview mirror as well. I think you've got two teams that are in, I don't want to say identical spots because I feel certainly that we're on an upswing.
Yeah.
We're two teams that really need a win, and it's unbelievable that in a couple weeks it's flipped from are we going to go to a bowl to can we win the West?
Yeah.
And I can't remember a change. The only change I remember like this was obviously Joe's first year when Coach Tiller came in. And when that scene was playing out on Saturday, there was a bunch of people saying, this is unbelievable, and a lot of the new people in the department. And some of us who have been there a while were like, this is great, this is awesome, but we've seen this before. We saw that when Joe kind of rolled into town, and we had some of those moments. In fact, I was on the field as a student, and one of those moments may or may not have been helping take down a goalpost.
Yeah, I don't know. You weren't stealing Tim Stratton's helmet.
I did do that, but I told that story the other day to the staff, and I've said this before when I come on this show. We're big into storytelling on our staff, and Coach Painter, we relive stories all the time, and we got into a bunch of old football stories. And Steve Lutz, who's in his second year with us now, we've been bringing him up to speed on the history of Purdue football. So a lot of old Joe Tiller stories, a lot of old. The Tim Stratton helmet story came up. Yeah. And we tell these stories. He kind of looks at you like that can't be real. Like I promise you, all these stories are real. Now we may embellish them a little bit as the years go on.
Yeah, they can always get better. But the only bittersweet thing is that Joe Tiller. I would love to have heard him tell those stories well into his 80s because those stories of Stratton and the opinions that he had towards him and.
But it's a similar feel. I mean, don't you think? I mean, this team and the way they're moving the ball, throwing the ball over the field, it's very similar. When Coach Tiller first got here, I was worked in the sports information office as a student, and then came back full time as an employee in the sports information office. And I just remember those years, like it was every week we were updating the record book. It was every week, like it felt like literally every game was a top 10 passing performance in Purdue history, in Big Ten history, in NCAA history. Like we were shattering records, and I know the yardage in this year's team is not equivalent, but the excitement and throwing the ball all over the place certainly is.
But they can score 40 points for the fourth straight time in a Big Ten game for the first time ever. So I mean, they're doing it. All right, one last question. We're already over time, but that's all right. It's the internet. Carson Edwards versus Rondale Moore in some kind of, not sporting, I mean, I'd love to see him play one-on-one in basketball. I don't know if Rondale can play, but there's some interesting. Purdue has never, you've been around it long enough, I don't know that you've ever had two more dynamic guys at the same time. I mean, what could they both do? I mean, Carson did play football. I don't know that Rondale would be a sneaky little guy in basketball. He's not real tall, but what an athlete.
Yeah, we always joke that Carson would be a great tailback.
Slot receiver, I think.
Nogel would be a great free safety. I call Nogel, I always call him Steve Atwater.
Yeah.
And he looks at me, and I said, go Google Steve Atwater. You'll see what I'm talking about. And Nogel's huge.
Yeah.
Carson and Rondale. Rondale, I don't know him as well as personality.
Yeah.
I know just from talking to their staff, he's a pretty reserved, quiet guy, which is not Carson. Carson's, I think, a lot more. There's a lot more showmanship in Carson.
Yep.
So I think two different styles in that regard, but both of them just have that it factor, just that lightning bolt quickness. They see things both really well. Like I think it's obvious. Rondell sees, he sees the whole field. He makes the perfect cut, it seems, at every opportunity. Carson's got a little bit in them too. When he goes coast to coast, he's weaving in and out of guys, and there'll be times he'll go towards 3 people, and I'm thinking, hey, pull this ball out. He's the classic, pull it out, good shot, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like if the coach raises his hand, like, what's he doing? And then he makes it, and you can kind of put your hands down and look the other way. But both of them, just possess that burst that we haven't seen in a long, long time. The closest guy maybe that I've seen with Purdue football, Vinny had Sutherland.
Oh, he had it.
He had a burst, but not this burst.
No. And not the ability to cut.
And this guy is going in and out of traffic, through traffic, that kind of thing. So special and great times. Our fans just need to soak it up and enjoy every moment of it.
Good advice there. All right, I want to thank our sponsors, State Farm and Trent Johnson, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, of course, Hilton Garden Inn, and of course also Greg and Carrie Ayersman at Route 66, Basham Reynolds, John Basham. Thank Elliot, Leroy Keys, Matt Stevens for joining us, and Gordon and Steve back in the back room for letting us go a little long today. We, like I said, I told you Elliot and I would get to talking, so that's a good thing. We'll be back next week, a whole new set of guests, as we'll also preview Purdue, Iowa, and talk Purdue Marion basketball too next week on Golden Black Live. Have a great week, everybody. Enjoy the game tomorrow.